The third prince's squad also wandered through the forest in search of the elusive Yun village, but neither Myung Bai nor his subordinates could locate the settlement. One day, scouts stumbled upon a peculiar traveler, and the men assumed he wasn't a local, deciding to ask for directions. The stranger was friendly and explained in detail to them which stone to reach to find the entrance to the desired village. The scouts thanked the traveler, now having at least some information to provide to their commander. The traveler, ignoring the strangers, continued on his way, simply turning his back and walking away. One of the warriors found this stranger quite odd. He was dressed in a strange cloak, and the man wore a rain hat on his head, despite the delightful weather for several days. He asked his companion if he found their conversation with the man and the man himself strange, but his comrade did not sense any danger from the man. They decided to split up. One scout intended to follow the route indicated by the traveler. The other hurried to the third prince with a report on the potential enemy camp's movements. The actions of these strangers did not go unnoticed by the man in the hat. Everything he told them was not just casual. The third prince settled on a rock, his horse nearby, and the man was furious. The scouts couldn't find the Yun village. It was as if the settlement had vanished from the face of the earth, but such a thing was impossible. Suddenly, the subordinates fell to their knees, apologizing for the delay in exploring the forest. But the prince wasn't interested in the reasons, he wanted to know the result. One soldier said that the village they needed was just 5,000 steps up this slope. The commander jumped to his feet, stating that they were wasting time talking about everything, and it was time to hurry. But since he was still angry, he needed to vent, and who suited the role of a punching bag better than these incompetent men. The man beat both of them for making him wait too long. The warriors lay on the ground, groaning and nursing their bruised areas. The prince mounted his horse, saying that it was a small punishment for their slowness, and from now on, the men should be more alert. He arrived at the soldiers' resting place, put on his frightening mask, and ordered the squad to follow him. Hundreds of warriors quickly gathered and followed their lord. They were loyal to him to the end. Watching all this from above was Red Knight, one of the four emperor's best warriors. The man hurried to report back to his teacher. That was the purpose for which he was sent ahead to gather intelligence. The master sat surrounded by other disciples, and Red Knight hastened to get straight to the point. He reported that this little scoundrel, the third prince, led his people further. Perhaps his scouts were not useless after all. One of the disciples asked if they should also set out in that case since they were heading to the same place as Mo Yunbai. The teacher prohibited his people from taking any action, believing that the best strategy would be to wait. Black Knight then asked what to do with the young prince. They had no order to guard him, and he might suffer. Indu said that he wasn't going to save those who rushed into battle without thinking. After the junior prince's army caused chaos in the village, they would come and finish everything at their discretion. Meanwhile, the third prince's squad reached the rock that had the shape of a blade sticking out of the ground. The man was slightly surprised. The rock of such a shape seemed more like a skillful illusion. Could it be real? He turned to his scouts and asked where the village was, as logically, it should be right behind the entrance after reaching that particular rock, but nothing was visible. The men pondered, and the commander ordered them to immediately hasten the search for the village. Soldiers broke into small groups to find the settlement. The squad leader was beside himself with rage. He had never led such fools before. Sitting on the nearest rock, the prince began to lament about what idiot served in his squad, unable to find a simple little village. Suddenly, his solitude was interrupted by a male voice. A stranger was in the shadows nearby and sternly asked if they dared to disobey his orders so quickly. Who did this young man think he was? The prince looked ahead in surprise, not understanding who dared to speak to him in such a tone. White Chun emerged, closer to the young man, and asked why he was so persistently searching for the village. Didn't he realize that entering there would be akin to entering the gates of hell for any stranger? The commander jumped off the rock, shouting that he was the very guy the third prince was looking for. The young man was determined and threatened that the moment he drew his sword, young White Chun would regret everything. However, the man's leg prevented him from fulfilling the promise, and the sword remained in its sheath. The prince was furious. He had been touched, and not just touched with a foot in dirty boots. But the hero was indifferent to the prince's reaction. He simply kicked the prince with all his might, and he flew down with a yell. At the commander's cry, his warriors rushed over. They saw the prince lying in the mud and groaning at their feet. One warrior leaned over his lord to inquire if everything was all right. The young man's face distorted with a grimace of anger. He jumped up and, with all his might, shouted the order to attack. He wanted to immediately finish off the scoundrel White Chun. The crowd of warriors aimed their blades at the man, who wasn't even armed. At least, he didn't have a sword in his hands. Without hesitation and without giving the opponent a chance, the hero decided to attack this squad first. He used the technique of the demonic fist to beat the soldiers of the third prince thoroughly. The chief among the soldiers was giving orders to the others. Men were preparing to use their secret techniques and magic. The warriors surrounded White Chun in a circle, like a strange spiral in several rows, and prepared their swords for the attack. After stomping a bit in place, the hero carefully surveyed the squad, grinned, and jumped up. Soldiers watched in amazement as the guy hovered in the air. Many of them started saying that the enemy was scared and fleeing the battlefield. But this jump was needed by the hero for an attack. He gathered his energy to strike the rock. The blow was powerful. The rock began to wobble, and from the point of impact, crumbs fell. Soldiers stared upward in astonishment, watching the powerful hilt of a sword, which had recently been a rock, falling straight onto them. Many warriors were pinned down by the stone. Cries and moans could be heard from everywhere. White Chun pushed the remaining part of the rock to crush his enemies. He activated all his chi in his palm and directed it at the stone slab, wanting only one thing: for all the scoundrels who came to sow chaos in his village to perish. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave comments to help the new video come out as soon as possible. Have a great day.
Didn't even get to pause.